I'm Devanshi. I'm part of the community health team at the Career Center, and I work along with Shams. Tonight's event is about the career physician assistant, and today we have alums Karly Leiman, class of 22, and Martina Brave, class of 17. So to get started, I'll let the two of you introduce yourselves and what you do right now. And then give the question after.
Karly, you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. So like she said, I graduated from Hamilton about 3.5 years ago, which is so crazy now because it feels like it was a blip in time. I studied neuroscience at Hamilton. Um, and then after that, I took a year off, got into PA school. I went to Marist, which is down in Poughkeepsie, a few hours from where Hamilton is. And I graduated from there this past May. And now I am about 4 weeks into my job. I'm working as a neurosurgery PA at a hospital that's also in Poughkeepsie, and I am loving it very, very much. And yeah, so I guess I'm kind of good as a fresh face out of PA school and kind of getting into the working balance and kind of navigating that. Yeah.
Yeah. I graduated Hamilton in 2017. I took 2 years off after Hamilton and I did clinical research for 2 years, which I loved that experience of having time to like be a human being for a couple years. And then I went to PA school at Stony Brook out on Long Island. I graduated in 2021, which was like right in the middle of the pandemic, and started working a couple months after, as soon as I took my boards in cardiac ICU. Initially, I worked there for about 2 years, and then I switched to a medical ICU, which is where I'm now. And I've been in my current role for about 2.5 years, and about a year ago, I became the supervisor for my team. So I now have mostly clinical, but I manage my team of PAs in the medical ICU in Manhattan.
Great, thank you. So for our first question, what inspired the two of you to become a PA?
What inspired me? I think I always wanted to go into healthcare. I'd been back and forth a lot about being pre-med or not being pre-med, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted. And that's why I took 2 years off. And while I was in my clinical research role, I was exposed to I worked with PAs, I worked with residents, fellows, and attendings. And I worked in the emergency room and in the ICU, and I immediately noticed I like wouldn't be able to pick one thing. I really liked a lot of different things. And I know part of me wanted to spend like, 10 years training to do what I do now. And so I felt that the PA route made more sense for me personally because I didn't care necessarily about what my role was or working with like an attending or whatnot. You're always really in like a team-based approach. And so I felt that it was just a better fit for my life and what I wanted out of my lifestyle after I started working and stuff like that.
I have a kind of a similar thing to Martina. I always loved science, always loved the medical field, knew that I was going to be in healthcare. Um, for me, I was pre-med, and then beginning of sophomore year at Hamilton, um, I started kind of looking into events like this and learning more about the PA role, kind of speaking to people, um, figuring out kind of what that difference between going to medical school and becoming a PA, like what that meant for me. And then I realized I have so many interests in medicine. Um, I didn't want to just pick one thing because when you're a doctor, you're really, unless you're in like internal medicine, maybe you can work outpatient or in a hospital. When you're a doctor, you're in that one specialty and that's what you do. If you love it, if you don't love it, that's what you're doing. But as a PA, you really have that flexibility to kind of change specialties, work in different settings, inpatient, outpatient, kind of be an independent provider, but also be part of a team, which I liked that. Because, like I don't care if I'm the smartest person in the room, but I know I'm one of the smart people in the room. So that's kind of how I looked at it, because some people just really want to become a doctor and have the final say. But for me, I liked the flexibility of the career, and I also liked that I did not have to be in school forever. So yeah, I mean, I think PAs really bridged the gap. In medicine, we're really lacking a lot of good providers in every specialty, everywhere, every setting, and PAs really can be making medicine and healthcare more accessible. So that was always very exciting for me, and I decided that my sophomore year, and yeah, happy that I did that.
Thank you. So can you guys explain a little bit about what a PA does and what their role is?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about, at least I think the PA role is different at every hospital and in every like state, I would say. So it very much depends on where you practice and where you train. So I guess I can speak to like a day in the life. The PAs on my team is a very unique team. We work with alongside the residents in our ICU, which is pretty unique. Most units are PA run or resident run. And it's actually really fun because it's like the Columbia residents work in my hospital. They're spectacular. And so we work together as a team. We do a lot of varied things. We do a lot of the procedures in the unit, like when patients need central lines, arterial lines, things like that, ultrasound guided IVs. My team tends to be on the forefront of that. We tend to bridge the gap between nursing and the team because we're permanent in our unit and the residents are constantly rotating. We do a lot of the ICU triage stuff, which is like seeing consults in the emergency room or around the hospital, and then discussing with our attendings if we think the patient needs to come to the ICU or if we think that they can be managed elsewhere. In my previous unit, it was a PA run unit. We had some residents, but it was mainly just us. We did all of the admissions, progress notes, presented the patients on rounds, which was great as a new grad PA. Now I'm glad to not have to do so much of that anymore. Like I don't have to focus on so much of the note writing and things like that. I can just kind of manage care in the unit as needed. But I think depending, like I have friends from PA school who work in different states, who work in different specialties. So it's really hard, I think, to describe exactly what the role is because you have to be willing to adapt and kind of shapeshift into what each team needs. And that's sort of the beauty of it. Like when you're in a unit that has, for example, if my unit has a team that week that's really into procedures, I'm going to be doing a lot of teaching. But if they're really freaked out by them, I'm going to be doing a lot of procedures by myself. If the nursing staff that week is having a really hard time meshing with people, you're going to do a lot of communicating between people. If you're working overseeing someone who's a little bit weaker on the medicine stuff, a lot of the times you're the attending's eyes when they can't be there, and you end up just communicating with them on the side about what's going on the unit when they're not there. But I think it varies vastly, unit to unit, team to team, hospital to hospital, and then even more state to state on what you're allowed to do in different places.
Yeah, I like to think of like the PAs like we're independent providers in a way, but then we're also like an extension to the physicians that we work with, especially in hospitals. But I mean, like my best friend, she works in primary care as a family medicine PA. She has all her own patients. They come to the office, they see her. She does her exam, assessment, diagnosis, prescribes, and that's that. And like they never see the doctor. So in outpatient settings like dermatology, um, family medicine, pediatrics, whatever, urgent cares, like PAs are really like you can see a PA or a doctor and they might do the same thing. So that's that. But then exactly in the hospital, it's different. I mean, I'm a surgical subspecialty, and I happen to be in a pretty small group. I work with 3 neurosurgeons, and then right now there's only 2 PAs, but we're adding a third. Because I'm not in like a big city. In other places they might have more. But yeah, so it's a small group of us, and I work really closely with the neurosurgeons. There's no residents in my team, which is nice because I'm right there with the doctors. There's no one who's kind of coming in and out and needs to learn because they're going to be the doctor one day, which I really like. So pretty much I'll be rounding with the doctors, which means like we'll go see all the patients that are neurosurgery patients in the hospital. And unfortunately, I had to be the one writing all those notes, but documenting is big in medicine, no matter who you are. And then I'll go see consults. Sometimes I do that by myself, sometimes I do with the doctor. People coming into the ER needing neurosurgery, I'll go check them out, kind of talk through the next steps with the physician if they're there. And then my favorite part, I get to first assist in all the surgeries that we do. So I'm hands-on in the OR, doing bedside procedures for anyone that needs that. And yeah, I really, really love it because I feel like I can really do so much. And if I want to work in a different surgical specialty, I can take those skills elsewhere, and it's really, really great. And then the other side of my job, besides being in the OR and inpatient, I get to see our outpatient follow-ups. So it's cool because I kind of have that balance between hospital office, and my office is attached to the hospital. So I kind of get to do one thing, do the other thing, and have some variation in my day, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, I feel like PAs get to do a lot in my role at my hospital, but it might be something else somewhere else depending on the team. So.
So what skills did you learn at Hamilton that you use in your careers now?
That's a good question. I have to reach back for this. I'm old now, but I think a big thing, I've actually talked about this with my friends from Hamilton after graduating, and we're all in very different fields. I'm the only one in like a medical field, and we all agree on the same thing. We all learned how to think critically and think on your feet, which is something that is very much taken for granted today. And so I don't think that that's something tangible. I think it just comes over time, but I think you're held to a really high standard. You're expected to perform at a really high standard, and you're surrounded by people who are also equally as hungry as you and wanting to perform to that level. And I don't think you notice it until you leave that environment. And so I very much took it for granted while I was in that space. And I've since talked about it with my friends where we see how we approached our first jobs, how other people around us did, how I think as a whole, we are taught how to critically analyze what we're reading, what we're seeing, what we're hearing in a way that not every college student is being taught. And you notice that more and more as you get more and more removed from that experience. Um, but another thing which I took for granted while I was at Hamilton is the writing skills. I am not like a writer in any way you look at it. But in science, you have to write a lot, whether it's like research papers or clinical notes or even just like writing people work excuses, whatever it might be. I'm the only person on my team that doesn't like chat GPT how I write these things for my patients. And I think it's because it comes very easily to us. You can very quickly put something together in your mind, write it out. It takes you 2 seconds. same with like clinical papers. I remember not having a hard time writing those when we were doing research, things like that. But I think these are all things that are not learned in one specific class, but are taught to you throughout your time there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like, and not even just with like the whole like writing intensive thing, and like everyone does extracurriculars and every class kind of incorporates that, you know, but like just in general, like the communication, I feel like everyone that goes to Hamilton has such a strong, um, like our skills in communication are really, really good. And yeah, like I remember I was on like a clinical rotation, and I'm like, oh my gosh, every single med student I interact with, like, I'm like, is it something with them or is it me? Like, I feel like I was just on a different level from people, not to sound cocky, but I mean, just like the way that I'm feel like we're taught to express ourselves like in different environments, and then being able to like communicate with people of different backgrounds and be open to kind of being in all these new spaces. I feel like Hamilton was really good because, like, you know, like you're anyone who's going to medicine, most of us kind of did that like scientific background. Um, but like we're at Hamilton, you're just exposed to so many different things, class wise, people wise, events, just things going on at the college, that I feel like your intellectual level is higher than you may realize, which is really, really awesome for us. Um, and yeah, just in general, like totally being open minded and being exposed to new things, people from all over the place, and just being able to kind of develop these strong relationships with classmates, professors. I feel like we did that so much more than friends that I had at other like big schools. Um, and like when you're comfortable going to a professor or reaching out to an alum, or talking to somebody about your research that you haven't met before, that translates into the medical field too, because I mean, we're meeting people every single day, patients, other doctors, nurses, colleagues, whoever. And though you don't know this person, you have to be comfortable with them and be able to communicate clearly with them. So, yeah, that's a good takeaway.
Thank you. So what are some of the biggest rewards and challenges of as working as a PA that you see?
I think it depends a lot on your specialty. The biggest reward for me are the relationships. Patients in my unit, for the most part, are like intubated, sedated. So sometimes I'm developing relationships with my patients, but I would say a big reward of my specialty is the relationships you develop with their family members. You are treating them as much as you're treating your patient, because oftentimes you're working with them for having like goals of care discussions around what, you know, the expectations need to be in the case, or talking to them, explaining through things that we're going to do, walking them through procedures, consents, things like that, updating them clinically on what's going on. So you spend a lot of time with those family members. I think that's one of the most rewarding things. Um, both when a patient does well and when they don't. There's like something about that relationship that feels really good. I think the biggest challenge, there's two of them. One is that the current climate today around healthcare is really difficult. I think depending on what population you work with, my population is, I think, incredible. They're very receptive to expertise and your recommendations. But it's becoming more and more challenging to face this sort of widespread change in the population where people are not appreciating or seeing science for what it is, and your expertise for what it is. So that's one challenge, but I think particular to my job, the ICU has really high highs and really low lows, and the lows are really hard. there's an extremely rewarding part to these relationships, but then when your patient doesn't do well, if someone passes away, or arguably the alternative to that is when we do too much for someone who should just be let to be at peace. That can be really challenging because you, at least in New York State, cannot really not offer something to a patient. So I've had like 100-year-olds that I've put central lines in who were demented, who couldn't express to me what was going on. And the whole time you are hating yourself, but you have to do it because it's your job. And so that can be a really big challenge, but then the rewards on those relationships that you create with people, both within the team, I think, and the patients and their families can be so incredible.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much like going off of that, I think it's really a blessing to be able to be with someone on their hardest day. I mean, like in neurosurgery, we have a lot of very critical patients, um, brain tumors, brain bleeds, people that might become paralyzed. Like a lot of it's pretty bad. Some of it's not as severe. Someone's back hurts. That's not as bad, thank God. But you know, like you're with somebody on like one of their worst days, and even though they're going through a really hard time, for me it feels really good, and I feel like it's my purpose to be able to be hopefully a source of hope on their worst day, or to be someone who gives them calm. And really, I mean, they're going through a hard time, but you're there with them. And I really hope that I could be able to make a difference to them, and that they remember, even if they're upset and crying and they're suffering, that they know that I care. So I feel every day that I walk in the hospital, I'm thankful that that I'm able to take care of these people and their family members. And I feel very lucky to be able to do that. Um, I really love neurosurgery. I love my specialty. I have a lot of fun. I love learning. So that's like I mean, I know I'm new, so it'll change maybe, but right now I'm just really excited to be there every day. So I'm happy that I'm so far in a career that feels like home for me. Um, I mean, challenges like right now, something for me is there's never something that, or the learning right now. Oh, sorry, I'm having a little brain fog. Um, but there's so many new things constantly coming up for me. And I mean, obviously, I'm new and I'm learning. And neurosurgery, it's very specialized. So it's not something that you don't really learn a lot about in school. Um, Besides like on a clinical rotation. So right now I'm like, okay, what do I know? What do I not know? How can I learn more about this? A lot of things in medicine you have to learn about by being hands-on and seeing it and being practical. So right now I kind of just have to be comfortable knowing that I don't know everything and I have a lot to know, and learn going forward, and that's totally okay. At first, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. We all get that sometimes. And oh, am I smart enough to be here? But everything is great. And yeah, so that's something for me recently. And then, yeah, I mean, like, I'm also in New York. So I've seen some things so far that I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this poor person, like, you just wish that, I mean, obviously, you want everyone to have their chance, but you wish that the family would understand that their loved one is brain dead and they are never going to be the same person that they knew before. So it's hard, but then you know you're trying to help them and their family. So it's that balance. So yeah.
So moving on more to what PA school application looks like. So for the first question for that is, what was the PA school application process like? Like, what was the timeline for it? How was CASPA done? Personal statements, interviews, all of that.
Carly's going to be much more in tune with this than me at this point. I remember it being a year-long process. I feel like I blacked it out at this point because it's stressful. From what I remember, at the time that I applied, things have changed a lot. So I feel like I'll keep this brief and I'll let Karly talk a little bit more about it. I picked programs that were in the area I wanted to live in, and I made a big Excel file with the programs that were in the area that I wanted. I checked all of their like requirements because when I applied, I don't know if that's still the case, a lot of programs had very different requirements. And this was actually advice I got from a Hamilton grad that was a PA, which was extremely helpful, was making this Excel file and just checking what their requirements were and then looking through to see which ones I was missing. If I was missing a class, did they let me do it after being accepted so I didn't have to preemptively take a class that wasn't going to be worth it for me to take, things like that. And then I remember CASPA was sort of like the same thing as when I applied to Hamilton. It's just like one centralized place. You put all of your information in there. Personal statement is just like when you applied to college, like most people have very similar sounding personal statements, and you want to make yours be unique to what is leading you to PA school. And you want to stand out to the admissions committee because, like with everything else, you are one of a ton of people applying to it. Interviews, I remember more. A lot of the applications had like supplemental applications. So you would initially send your primary application and then you would get an email back from them inviting you to submit a supplemental. Every school that had a supplemental, I remember getting an automatic email to submit it. And you have to pay extra for it. Like, I think it's just automatic and everyone gets them. And then shortly after submitting those supplementals that were more like, why do you want to go to the school? Why this program? Same as Hamilton, like the why Hamilton, same concept. Then you started getting phone calls or emails about interviews. And the interviews were very nice. I remember I'm trying to remember the specific programs. I remember at Stony Brook, they had you interview with 3 different rooms, and each room had one member of the faculty and one current student or alumni, which was really nice. So you had 2 different perspectives. I think I interviewed at Rutgers, Hofstra, and it was really similar. I can't remember much more beyond that. And then, but the interviews were very standard. It wasn't so much like the Hamilton interviews, it was a little more formal. They asked you specific scenario questions, ethics questions. They wanted to see how you communicated, how you fit into a conversation. And participating in them after being an alumni and seeing them from the other side, all they want to see is your personality come out. They want to see how adaptable you are to a situation, how you communicate, and how you think through situations. And so obviously you're nervous in those. They're not like ride or die, but they want to get to know you and see your personality come out a little bit, because a lot of these classes are built by bringing many people from with something unique, each of them together. And so they want people with different clinical experiences, different educational backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, so that your classroom, because it's so accelerated and you're learning so much at once, can be a little bit diverse. That's as much as I remember. Karly's a little bit closer to this than I am.
I feel like that was pretty spot on.
So
Yeah.
nothing has changed, is what I mean.
Yeah, like I remember I'm a big planner. So like I knew I only wanted to take a year off after Hamilton. I had a lot of clinical experience throughout Hamilton because I was in college during the pandemic. So I had all these little roles that I did and whatnot. And I kind of knew like, okay, I have enough hours that I would be able to apply. So kind of throughout like my senior year, I think like during winter break, I spent a ton of time um, like making that big Excel file. I did the same exact thing. I kind of thought, oh, like where do I want to be? Or where would I like think about going? I applied to like a school in Nashville, like because I was like, oh, that sounds fun. I don't know. Didn't end up going there, but whatever. So I kind of like threw around. I made a big ranking. Oh, where do I want to go? I was like, I don't only want to apply once. PA school is hard to get into, so I ended up with like 20 schools on my list, which is a lot.
It's
It's a lot, but whatever. Um, so then kind of from there, you apply like the year before you would go. So like I remember I graduated and like a week later, I started submitting applications. But you are able to work on your CASPA application prior to actually like applying and submitting it. Well, obviously that sounds very obvious, but like, for example, now you can start it right now. It's November. Even if you're just open it, look at it, whatever, you can start it now. So I did that. I would like slowly fill some things in. That way it wasn't overwhelming when I went to apply in like that April, May timeframe. Um, and yeah, like you put in on the CASPA, like all of your experience, if you did research, what clinical hours you have, because you need that patient care. Like I was an EMT and a medical assistant, so you put like descriptions of the jobs that you had, how many hours, start asking for your letters of rec, whatever, all that stuff. Kind of compile it and then just send it out with the supplements. Same thing, they send you it. I had to take the GRE for a few of my schools and this other exam called the Casper, which is like some weird personality thing.
I didn't take it, but a lot of med schools require the
Yeah.
Casper, and some of my friends did it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like some weird thing. I don't even know, but
Like
like,
a personality test, basically.
yeah, it's like, what would you do if someone tried to cheat off your test? I'm like, come on, like that's weird. But yeah, just do everything you needed to do. Sent everything out. Like Martina said, every school has really different requirements. So, I remember like one of the chemistry classes at Hamilton, one school counted it for this, one school counted it for that. I had to just call up every program that I applied to and ask, hey, are you going to take this? I remember I had to send out all these syllabi from Hamilton. So if you have them, save them because the things I was missing, I had to get. And if you don't get them, then you're rejected like automatically. They're really strict with the requirements. And yeah, I've applied and then I started hearing back. That takes the longest time ever, which is really frustrating, about the interviews. I actually interviewed like at the same schools that you did, like Rutgers, Hofstra, LIU, and then a school in Pittsburgh and Marist. And yeah, like some of the, or all my interviews were on Zoom actually because of
Oh,
COVID,
so
I
with
guess.
COVID.
Yeah. And yeah, they ask you situational things, just things about yourself. Give an example of a time you had a challenge in a clinical thing. So like you kind of have to think in advance, like what are they going to ask me? Like I remember I looked up a bunch of common questions. I didn't like do an interview prep, but I would just like think about what I would say because they're going to ask me why I want to be a PA. So I want to know what I'm going to tell them. And then, yeah, after that, just being patient. The program that I ended up going to, they called me the next morning and told me I was accepted. For me, I was like, okay, great. You took my deposit. I'm going to go there. But I still interviewed because I was just curious. But yeah, I mean, it's like a really long process. Honestly, applications were expensive, which wasn't the best. I'm sure there's scholarships out there, but I unfortunately had to pay for everything, and you just gotta kind of think about that in advance. Think about how much these exams and all these things cost. Unfortunately, it's something that we have to think about, which sucks. But yeah, I mean, once you get through that, then you're just waiting and get some good news, bad news, and it's all good. You end up where you're meant to be. So yeah,
Thank you.
I think that's probably it between the two of us.
Yeah, I think the other thing I remember as you're saying this, I feel like the CASP application in and of itself isn't complicated, but it's time consuming.
Yes.
And all of the programs I applied to, I imagine most of them are rolling admission. So you want to submit your applications as soon as you can when CASPA like opens and allows you to, which sounds stressful, but because you can work on it really far in advance, you have a lot of time on your side to get it as teed up as possible and have your transcripts on there. You have to get your transcripts sent officially. from every school. So like if you took classes online or you took a class somewhere else, you have to get those transcripts too. So I feel like there was little things that took a long time with that, but the earlier you have it submitted, they fill their programs on a rolling basis too. So as people apply and interview and get in, same as Karly, I got a phone call the next morning after an interview with an offer. From every school that I got into, I got a phone call immediately the day after my interview or a couple days after my interview. And so they're filling those spots as they go. So sometimes they don't even do, like Stony Brook always does 2 interview dates. Sometimes they wouldn't do a third. Some years they would, depending on where their class was out. So you want to get those in as quickly as possible so that you're in that early batch.
Yeah, I remember there was a program that I applied and interviewed with, and they told me like when the day that I interviewed, and I already got into a couple places, so it was fine. But they were like, "Oh, well, you guys were in the later batch, even though I applied in like early May. Oh, you're in the later batch, so um, if like no one here is going to be accepted." I was like, "Why are you even interviewing me?" They said, "Oh, like, but if you're waitlisted, that means like we would have accepted you." And I'm just like, "Okay, whatever. Like, I don't, it's fine. It's all good." But yeah, like being on top of that is super, super important. I mean, I think pretty much everywhere was rolling. There's a few places that aren't, and like they told you, but pretty much everything you need to get it in like as soon as you can, not to be like stressing anybody out. But hey, I mean, it's nice to kind of get things done here and there when you have the time. And then a few things come down to crunch time, like when you're graduating or when you're a junior, if you are very ambitious. Most people take off time. Um, but yeah, you're able to get it in. I remember I waited because like thesis was big. So I was like, I will wait until after graduation, and it worked out for me, so it's fine.
Okay, so for our next question, which will probably be this last one for me, and then I'll open up the floor to everyone else to ask questions, but what advice would you give for strengthening the applications and preparing for interviews?
For what? Sorry.
What advice would you give for strengthening applications and preparing for interviews?
I think for strengthening applications, it's do things that you're interested in, but get valuable clinical experience. I think the sort of like bullshit clinical experience shows in your application and it shows in school. Like when I had classmates who had done like really pointless clinical work and you could tell like they did not have any clinical knowledge. And the purpose of the clinical experience isn't to like weed applicants out or anything like that. It's literally because the information comes at you so fast in PA school that if you don't have a basic knowledge of that information, of those terms, of clinical like thought process, it's going to be extremely difficult for you to keep up. And so that's where the clinical experience comes into play. So doing like hands-on patient work is amazing. The closer you are to like clinical work, the better that's going to be of value to you. I had friends in PA school who had worked at GYN clinics, had been medical assistants, had been techs on inpatient like OBGYN floors. And so they had a lot of hands-on knowledge of managing situations. And then when you're studying with your friends, you each have like your own knowledge base that came before PA school and you help fill that in. So I think that shows when you do clinical work that's valuable, that you actually enjoy and not just to get the hours done. And in interviews, I think like I assume every person in this room is like a Hamilton student to the standard that I'm imagining, and you are going to be great at an interview. Um, Interview them too, is my advice. You are picking a program that's going to be undoubtedly like some of the hardest thing, like one of the hardest things that you will ever do. PA school was the most humbling experience ever. It is extremely difficult. The amount of classwork, studying, information that is being thrown at you during your first year when you're didactic is insane. Pick a program that actually fits what you want and that focuses on the things that you want and that has faculty that care about your outcomes and your hiring and things like that. Because it's not just them interviewing you. And so come prepared with questions that really tell you about the program, because every program is very different, how they're structured, the length, how they do, even if you fail an exam, how do they handle that? How do they help you through remediation? Things like that are very different program to program. And you want to make sure that you have a program that's going to back you up and help you succeed.
Yeah, everything she said was awesome. You know, like I think just in general, you gotta really trust yourself. Like I said before, getting into PA school is pretty hard. I had really good stats, I think. And I interviewed at like 5 places and I got into 2. And like, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that got into everywhere that they interviewed at and got into like, or you know what? I was waitlisted at the other places that I didn't get into. So that counts for something. I didn't get rejected from anywhere that I interviewed at. But you know, like you gotta believe in yourself. You gotta know when you're ready. Like I had a friend at Hamilton who applied for PA school. She wasn't confident in her application and she didn't get in anywhere. And then she ended up deciding she didn't want to become a PA. She's a nurse now. She's doing awesome. So good for her. I'm happy for her. But you really got to know that this is what you want to do. It's not a job, like it's your career. That's what I think about becoming a PA. Like this isn't something that, oh, like maybe I want to do this. Like you have to be really set on it, and be really committed. And I think that if you are committed, programs will see that in what you write for your personal statement. They'll see that in your interview, that they'll see it when you're there, you know? So I feel like just trusting yourself, being very honest with yourself, looking for valuable experiences is really important, because I mean like they're gonna ask you about what you did, and if you're kind of fibbing at all, then they're gonna find out. So yeah, just put yourself in the best position that you can be going in. And hey, like if you think, oh, I need another year, or maybe like I need another 2 years or something, then like that's okay. Like my friend in PA school, he was a paramedic for like 10 years and then he decided he wanted to become a PA. So not everybody goes like right through, which is totally fine. You kind of just have to let yourself shine. Again, be honest with yourself. Um, Looking up stuff on ChatGPT, don't do that. You have to really speak from your heart. That didn't even exist like a couple years ago. Like it's so crazy that that's like a thing now. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, just believing yourself, and like, especially if a program is interviewing you, that means that everything like you had on paper was really good. So now they would just want to like have a little chit chat with you and see what you got for them. So honestly, for me, that was the easy part because I can talk forever. And I'm very passionate about, or I was very passionate about becoming a PA, and now I'm passionate that I am a PA. So yeah, just keeping that joy and commitment up, and yeah, that's what I got.
Well, thank you so much. Now I'll open up the floor so if any of the students have any questions for Leiman, just go ahead and ask. Do you think doing extracurriculars that are not required were beneficial to your application? Did you hear her?
I can barely hear you guys.
Extracurriculars that aren't what?
Clinical hours, do you think they were beneficial to your application?
Yes,
Absolutely, yeah.
100%. They're beneficial to you as a person, and that's beneficial to your application. I think becoming a PA is about lifestyle balance, how you can help your patients and bridge this gap. If you are like a one-hit person and your entire life is clinical medicine, you're not going to serve your patients as well as if you're like a well-rounded human being. And so I think the more extracurriculars you do that have absolutely nothing to do with clinical work, the happier you'll be, the more well-rounded you'll be and the better your application will be, because you'll be more interesting as a person. It'll make you stand out from like the 7,000 other people applying right next to you that did all the clinical things. But I also think, again, like kind of to Karly's point, like stay true to who you are. And if there's something that you really enjoy, you should just do it because you enjoy it, because that's what's going to serve you in the long run. Like you're never going to regret doing fun extracurriculars that you enjoyed, and you will regret not doing them. Being many years removed from college, I can say that.
Yeah, and like honestly, the thing is too is like things that are extracurriculars that aren't science and clinics and everything, like they still have an impact on how you would be as a PA. Like, for me, I was involved in like a lot of leadership at Hamilton. I had a few jobs. Like I was an RA. I did CIF. I was like co-chair of that. I was on the swim team all 4 years. All these things that I did made me like a well-rounded person, um, which you can really speak to again, like these things, being able to balance all these things is very impressive to programs. Like I had people saying that to me, like they actually give you extra points, I think, for certain things if you're involved in it, you know, because they like score your application. Like one of the programs told me the fact that I was a swimmer shows them that I have great time commitment and can balance whatever. And I did this sport for however many years, and like that really teaches you things that aren't just about like being a sport or like being RA, you're a leader, So anything that you guys are doing that's outside the classroom, even like, I don't know, like something silly, like anything really can translate into your like personality traits and your characteristics and things that make you you, and everything is important. So yeah, do it all. Do all the fun stuff.
Yeah, sure.
I think the speakers on the ceiling, not.
Okay, it's right there. And what?
Yeah, so it's, as long as it's.
I want to ask about like lateral mobility because I've heard like mixed things about being able to switch specialties. And how do you think that is?
I think it depends on what your lateral mobility, what you want it to be. So theoretically, you can go wherever you want. I went from sort of a very specialized ICU to a less specialized ICU, which meant that I had to learn a lot of things from scratch, but it was a very easy transition, and a lot of the knowledge translated. If you were to go, for example, from a medical ICU to OBGYN outpatient, yeah, you're going to start from scratch. You have to like learn everything. You need to be trained. The caveat is where I'm like now a year 5 ICU PA, I would be a year 1 OBGYN PA. And so you may take a pay hit, which is something nobody talks about, but I think is important to be transparent about. Those jobs are open to you. You can apply to be a derm PA out of being a neurosurgery PA if that's what you want, but you're going to be as if you were a fresh new grad on their pay scale. And so that's something you have to take into account, but the mobility is there and you can go from specialty to specialty. I know people who do multiple specialties at the same time. I worked with a PA in my old hospital who used to per diem in a pain clinic, but then her main job was in the cardiac ICU, and then she did injectables on the side, like at whatever she wanted. But if you're starting from scratch in a new specialty, you're going to take a pay hit. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
I mean, I can't really speak to this as much because like I'm new. Yay. But from what I've heard, like they will, even if you're like new in a specialty, they still like care about your experience. So even if you weren't in that specific thing, like they're not going to be like, oh, like you're down to the bottom. So you're probably taking a pay cut, but they still like value that you had experience. So I've heard. But I mean, yeah, like I have one of my personal providers. She said like she likes to change jobs every 5 to 10 years, and she went from working in an ER to women's health, to family medicine. And I imagine that going from thing to thing, it's probably really hard, but hey, you're taking your experience in one thing to another. And certain things overlap more than others. Neurosurgery, I don't think is gonna help me at all one day. Like if I wanted to be like OBGYN, maybe it will. I don't know. But
Surgical skills will.
yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a bad example. Maybe, I don't know, something else. But yeah, like that's why I wanted to become a PA. Like you can really do so much. I've heard people that they have kids, and you want to spend time with your family, and you go from being inpatient to working part-time outpatient in something that's less demanding specialty. So that's also nice because you want to have a life. So yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about if there's pros and cons to taking one gap year versus two? Cause I know you guys both did different things.
Yeah, I can only speak to I took two because it's what I had always envisioned I was gonna do. When I graduated Hamilton, I wanted a time to just like exist without being under extreme stress for a little while. So my first year off, I took advantage of it and just sort of enjoyed it. I worked, I was in the city, I had fun, I was with my friends, and it was great to like enjoy your 20s with sort of zero responsibility in a sense. And then the second year was when I did like all my application stuff so that I could start that following year. And so that year was much more intense because you're spending a lot of your time doing your applications, your interviews, all those sorts of things. And so it gave me 1 year of actual time off. Um, a lot. What I will say in my PE program at Stony Brook, 2 years was the bare minimum anyone had taken. There was 3 kids in my class who came either straight from undergrad because they were at Stony Brook or had 1 year, and you could tell. That's will be what I'll say because they had less clinical experience. If they hadn't done a ton of clinical stuff during their undergrad, which most people didn't because that was difficult to get, they were the younger people in the class. Like my class was the age spread was kind of impressive. I would say the majority of people were in their like later 20s. I was at the time like I don't know 23 or something, and I was definitely in the very young group of that class. And I think the more mature people had a lot to add to the class, which was really valuable. So I think the value and the reason that I did the 2 years was I wanted that full year of doing nothing related to schooling. Like Hamilton's hard. I finished it. I can say that. Like it's hard. It's a hard school. The expectations are high. You are in this like overdrive 24/7. Having a chance to just sit and enjoy your accomplishment and live as like a new grad and wherever you want to live is really fun. So I definitely recommend it, but I had to wait. I'm a year older, because of it. So like that's the pro and con. Like I went into school a year later, I graduated a year later. My Hamilton friends had at that point, like none of my friends did healthcare things, and my friends were multiple years into their jobs making like real money while I was still in school. And so that's definitely a con. And you notice it at that age. Like my friends were talking about their 401ks, and I was like, I still have student loans to like take out. So that's, I think, the biggest con is you feel like you're falling behind a little bit, but you catch up very quickly after. So
Yeah, I mean, like, I can only speak to what I did. I am someone who likes being like busy, and I was like, I need to start school, whatever. I'm only gonna do a year. Worked out for me, so I'm happy with it. But yeah, like, I think most people in my program probably did 2 years, um, because like most people can't work clinical jobs in undergrad. Um, my circumstance happened to be different because COVID. I got to get in a lot of clinical hours, and I was working at a hospital in Utica like during school, and I was able to just do a lot, which I'm happy I was. But again, you got to be honest with yourself. Like, what are you able to do? What are you able to balance? If you're able to get enough, great. The only thing I would recommend not doing is going straight through because like my roommate went straight through and she was just like, no, she didn't, affected her mental health and it was just, she never got a break. I mean, for me, like it was nice because like I was able to bang out those applications after graduating pretty quickly and have a good handle on that. I got it accepted in August, like for the summer, I think I was working as a medical assistant just because why not? And then I ended up doing clinical research abroad until I started PA school, got home. I mean, I got to travel a bunch, I got to have fun. Like, so I mean, I only took a year, but I was still able to like do things and do whatever I wanted. So, I mean, it's again, it's just totally depends on you. Like there's no right or wrong answer. Some people take more time. So, hey, just do what makes you happy. But yeah, I remember like even now, like I'm like, yeah, I finally started my big girl job. Meanwhile, like everybody else has been working for all this time and has money and I'm paying the student loans back, but it's okay. It's always worth it in the end. So,
The other thing too with gap years is I remember my parents having a really hard time understanding, and if any of you have to have these conversations, I remember my parents having like strokes about this and being like, why you're gonna take time off, you're gonna forget how to do school, and then you're gonna want to go back. And that wasn't the case at all. You jump right back into it. It's like riding a bike. And I think something about having a moment to just like clear your brain of schooling is helpful. But if your parents tell you that, it's not true. Everyone around me, the only people that had a hard time jumping back into it from their experience was there were two people in my class that PA was a second career. And they were like in their late 30s, like they had children and like full existences before becoming PAs. It was a little bit harder for them, but everyone else in like the 2 to 3 year gap range were totally fine jumping right back in. A couple people had been like nurses or social workers or things like that and were coming, and they all were fine getting right back into it.
yeah, especially because like I feel like too, it makes a difference. Like as much as I love neuroscience, and like Hamilton and all that great stuff, like that wasn't like what I was gonna be doing in my career. So I feel like undergrad was hard in its own special way. Um, and then once you're in PA school, it kicked my butt. But I was able to excel and do really well because like you're finally doing what you know you're meant to do. Like you're finally learning about what you're passionate about and you're learning about how you're gonna do this procedure and like this system. So like it's more applicable knowledge. So I feel like maybe that also makes it easier to jump back in. Um, and just like in general, it's exciting when you're finally learning about your thing.
That's all the questions we have time for, but thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and speaking to all of us today. I'm sure we all learned something big we'll take home with us. But thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Also feel free if you have our emails, I'm fine with anyone emailing, whatever. If you
Yeah,
have questions,
absolutely.
yeah, just reach out. People helped us when we were in your shoes and
Yeah.
pay that forward.
Yeah, I can definitely share emails
Yeah.
for your rest. But thank you
Yep.
so much.
Thank you guys. Good luck.
Good luck. Have a good night, guys. Reach out with whatever.
Thank you guys for coming. Yeah.